Greetings from Baltimore, Maryland, USA. My name is Kim Poole. I'm a soul fusion performing artist and the founding fellow for the Teaching Artists Institute. We use art as a tool for social transformation and help to develop platforms for art for social transformation in 7 countries around the world, including our latest region, Tanzania. I'm so excited to talk with you today as a part of the Bagamoyo Autism Celebration and Research Week. Today is a really important day because it helps us better understand why music is such a crucial role to the development of all children, all human beings. Music is a universal language, and that includes our differently abled and different kind of smart children. So I'm going to talk with you today from personal experience, working specifically with tools that create rhythm and vibration in music over the course of my work as a teaching artist. I remember when I first read the book, This Is Your Brain on Music. And this book, written by Daniel Levitin, an artist turned neuroscientist, presented me with some very interesting concepts that later in my career I began to see in practice. He helped me to better understand the different areas of the human brain and how they worked. Basic psychology, right? I learned more about the frontal lobe, literally in the front of your head, the occipital lobe in the back of your head, the temporal lobe, the cerebellum and the cerebral cortex, and how these areas of the brain work together and what their functions were. In the temporal lobe, the Wernicke's area to help with speech development, and the Broca's area to help with speech interpretation. And I was so impressed when I understand how important music was to the human experience and also to the human body itself. As I read through the book, I remember in chapter 3 or 4, where Levitin, he began to talk about an experiment that he did to better understand how music affects the human brain. He talked about first the occipital lobe. I appreciate the visual art. Shout out to all the visual artists. We need you, and you add color to our world. But as I began to understand the visual arts, I realized how very different it was from music, from rhythm, vibration, to the human body and how the human body experiences it. You see, when you see color, red, blue, green, your body or your eye, it doesn't see color. What happens is that your eye acts as an interpreter for your occipital lobe in the back of your head. So you see through your retina a variation in light. Whatever variation in light your eye interprets, that message is sent from your eye to the back of your head to your occipital lobe, and then your occipital lobe tells you what color you're seeing. But music is very different, you see. Music, in its essence, is essentially vibration. And your body feels vibration physically. So in this experiment inside of this book, This Is Your Brain on Music, this neuroscientist, Daniel Levitin, he takes electronic nodes and he plugs them all over this brain, this test subject's brain, and he plays a chord on the piano. And based on his chord, he could look at the screen monitoring the vibration on the electronic nodes, and he could tell you which chord was being played. By looking at the screen that was attached to the electronic nodes plugged onto this human's brain, he could see, based on the way the brain lit up, the way that the brain responded on the screen, he could tell which chord was being played. what does that tell us? His experiment told us that your brain interprets music directly. There is no translator. Because your body feels vibration. When I call out to an audience, hey, are y'all feeling me? And they respond back to me, yeah, I'm feeling you. Kim Poole, I'm feeling you. They feel that vibration from my voice, that my vocal cords, that instrument created. Just as a drum or the keyboard that played the chord progression that he was able to interpret on his screen, just as he was able to see that using his monitor, the human body also feels that. They interpret music through vibration directly. Unlike the visual artists who add color to our world that use an interpreter, i.e. the eye, to travel back to the occipital lobe to interpret color, your body directly feels vibration and rhythm. And that really interested me because when I began later in my work as a teaching artist to meet young people that were on what we call the spectrum, the autistic spectrum, I began to take some of those concepts that I read about and see them in practice. I remember in 2016, I reconnected with one of my friends from high school. She also sang in the choir. Shout out to all the people that do choral music. Christina Cook. And she had developed an organization based on what she had saw from her daughter who was diagnosed on the autistic spectrum. She created an organization called the Rhythm Key. And she was in many ways building as she went along, using her daughter as that real live classroom to teach her what was working and what was effective. But what she realized through her journey, once she met me, was that rhythm had been the difference between her daughter's ability to socialize and communicate. That rhythm was the difference in her daughter's ability to engage and experience empathy. And so she created a drum circle, seeming so basic, so simple, a drum. So basic, but so impactful in her daughter's life. I remember the first time that I brought the Rhythm Key workshop to Washington, D.C. After meeting Christina and seeing the work that she was doing, I told her that, yes, you indeed are a teaching artist, and we need to find ways to promote the work that you're doing. And so we took her to Sankofa in Washington, D.C., and that day, it wasn't a good day for her to present, and so I had to step in. I had to fill in unprepared and unbeknownst to myself. And my job was to explain to the audience how autism felt. And so I took volunteers from the audience and I brought them on stage, and we had 3 large djembe drums, and I asked everyone to close their eyes. And I began to play a rhythm. And I played this rhythm, and I asked them to mimic the rhythm that I played, to listen carefully, mimic the rhythm that I played. And of course, at first it was difficult, but eventually we all were in sync. And when I asked them about the experience, they told me how difficult it was not being able to see me to give instruction, but eventually they could feel the beat. And so I think back to This Is Your Brain on Music and the book that I read that really helped inspire my journey to discovering why, or the why to some of the how that I saw in practice with the Rhythm Key work. And I realized that when he spoke about the cerebellum and the reason that you tap your foot when you hear the beat, when you hear rhythm, and you begin to tap your foot because you feel this beat. This is a part of the reason that when they close their eyes, even though it was difficult for them to follow the beat without having visual instruction, that they eventually was able to feel the beat and fall in line and to be in sync. I remember this exercise so vividly, and it helped me to better understand the importance of rhythm, specifically in music, as it relates to communication. And when I think about what the diagnosis of autism means, in many ways, it's something that we all experience. We're all on the spectrum, by the way. A lack of empathy, a lack of social development, and an inability to communicate in the same way that we so-called human beings that are so-called normal, that we communicate. And I think about what rhythm does. I think about what the drum circle does. And it breaks down all of the barriers, and it happens effortlessly. The drum and vibration in and of itself awakens the senses. It reminds the body, because young people on the autistic spectrum, they don't have the inability to be empathetic. They don't have the inability to communicate. They simply communicate differently, and they're inside of a world of their own. And so the question is, how do we tap into their worldview? Well, vibration does that. It helps us to get on the same accord. And I've seen it happen. I've seen young people that are completely socially distant. Wow, global pandemic. I just had a moment. Social distance. Yes, I see people that, young people that are completely socially distant become fully engaged